Colony in Virginia called the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, VCCA. It's possible some of you have been there. If not, and you're active writers, I encourage you just to visit their website. Going away to a colony is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself as a writer, or in this case, a visual artist or a composer, because they have all of them. You're out of your life, you're fed, you have privacy, you have a group of other artists all cooking away around you, and amazing things come out of that. So anyway, I'm not a big introducer, so I'm basically just going to read work. The first few poems are from the collection that Phil mentioned, The Disheveled Bed. Let me just get a little organized here. The first, for many years I lived in Los Angeles, and 10 years ago I moved to I lived in New York, and 10 years ago I moved to Los Angeles, and the first poem that I'm going to read is one of the first poems that I wrote out here, and it seems sort of appropriate today. The Los Angeles at Lancashire. After dark, when the Santa Anas descend from the San Gabriels to scour out the valley. At midnight, when almost everyone is asleep and Saturn with his rings shines above our hill, they let the water out. In silence, the river spreads to its banks. From resistance comes sound. 1,000 miles it flows through aqueducts to reservoirs that feed the town where succulent leaves, jumble of vine and riot of weeds exhale moisture back into the air each night, and released rainfall resumes its interrupted course until morning, when the stream bed dries up again save the central trough, in which a few feet wide and one deep, something always flows. A black stripe against concrete containing walls, someone spray painted with his initials, R.I.P., as what's left of the river descends cement steps to the sea. The next poem is the title poem of the collection, and it's about one of the themes of the collection, the disheveled bed. The birds are back. I like to think the first two, singing in the pines 4 years ago, 5 floors below, mated, gave birth, migrated, and came back with their young, who also bred, and whose descendants and theirs now pair up and nest. A new generation, every year we've lived here, one extended and extending family for the one denied us. The random yet orderly rise and fall of their songs, rising as high as our high-rise home, as you brush out my hair, and we straighten together the disheveled bed. Fishermen in the audience, but we live on the ocean. So I'll read the next poem. Brooke and Rainbow. Go ahead, touch, you said. So I petted both almost dead fish. A drool of blood clung to the rainbow's underslung jaw. By default, I know the brook, its flanks delicately freckled, tawny as a smog-bound sunrise. A scant hour later, and I can't believe the change. the brook spots swollen into splotches, enormous empty fish eyes staring back. I watch you scale, slit, gut, wash dry dust with salt and peppered flour, pan fry, and fillet them. On my plate, 2 half fishes. You won't tell me which is which, but it's plain to see each carries into death something of life, pink, blue, and green veined near translucency beside opaque late summer sunset. We take a bite of brook, one of rainbow, then another rainbow and a brook, until tiny bones fringe the rim like lashes. Why should we have to choose? Yet, even when we don't, we do. If I could, would I undo everything we've been through? Any scientist knows a rainbow doesn't actually exist, except in the mind's eye. Just try to hold on to flowing water. It escapes or becomes something else. But one changeable day, showers vying with sun, you brought us both, brook and rainbow. And I wouldn't trade the heartache that brought us to this happiness for the world. If I had to, I guess I'd take the brook. Its down-to-earth sweetness, the miracle of bugs converted to tender muscle, like love fattened on grief, lingering sweeter on the tongue for what it's consumed. So, for the last 10 years, I've been writing poems about my experiences as a survivor of 9/11. At the time, I lived in New York in an apartment building, the one referred to in that poem, a block from the World Trade Center. I was there that morning. I fled. One of the reasons I'm living in Los Angeles now is because of what happened that day. So I'm just going to read a few poems from this body of work. The first one was inspired by a minor league baseball game, which we went to see the week before 9/11, and it probably saved my life going to this game. The title refers to the kind of gate which you more frequently see closed over a storefront when the store is closed, called a scissor gate. In this case, it's also used on a boat. It'll be clear where. And the poem is dedicated, coincidentally, to a California artist called Ed Ruscha. The Scissor Gate. The night was mild, clear, beyond right field. Manhattan nestled on the horizon like coals. Though the Staten Island Yankees lost badly to the Jamestown Jammers, we didn't mind. There was still the ferry ride home. Beyond, the Scissor Gate pulled across the prow. The skyscrapers beckoned like a ribbon of stars that grew as we approached, dark bands of sky and water shrinking as the tiny buildings grew ever taller until they loomed above us, suddenly solid, but shot through with white light. The ethereal become all too real, scaffolding on another world. By the time the ferry eased into its berth, we longed to put our feet on solid earth. So the next poem was written in response to a lot of other writing that was done about that day and afterwards, which as someone who witnessed the events didn't sit right with me. It made me very angry, and this is the poem that came out of that. Ars Poetica, after 9/11. Let's not romanticize bodies falling. Others may use float or dance. I refuse to pretend. They were not graceful, quiet. They fell unbelievably fast. Straight down, head first. Some screamed. The sound they made landing, forget, thud, louder than the wind. And the last poem from this collection that I'm going to read is actually a sort of, I didn't realize it when I wrote it, but it's a sort of transition to my life out here in California, which has been very good to me. It was inspired by something that I saw the morning of September 15th, which was the first time that my husband and I were allowed to go back to the home from which I had fled that morning. It was another 5 months before we were allowed to move back in there, but we went back under police escort, and this is something that I saw along the way. The Winter Garden. 16 perfectly matched native California fan palms grew up in the Coachella Valley, took a train to Miami, wintered over, were trucked up to New Jersey, loaded onto barges, and ferried across the Hudson. Today, a few raggedy fronds poke above the debris, buried up to their necks in ash and shattered glass. The saga of the decade, they struggled to survive under motorized screens and floodlights on timers, wiped out in seconds when the North Tower fell. Beloved curved barrel of glass, delicate fretwork supporting its transparent skin, mosaic of marble from Carrara and a dozen other quarries in Italy, all crushed. And the palms, too, the poor palms. And the last few poems that I'm going to read are newer work, in some cases brand new work, from my life out here. I like to write about holidays. I know it sounds crazy. The poet Joseph Brodsky wrote a poem every birthday of his. And so actually every birthday of mine, I try to write something, but I do better with holidays. And you'll understand what this one is about when we get to the end of it. Do you know that a poem called an Obad is a sort of hymn of praise to the morning? This one is called Obad with Spider and Flag. How did the spiders know it's safe to spin their webs? That the parched winds funneling through the canyons will not rip them from their moorings. A late spring rain illuminate their work for someone to tear down. After a spattering too slight to call a shower, I fetch the papers. Since yesterday a gossamer scrim straddles the driveway, as high as the parapet of the house, so low I can barely duck under it. Smack in the middle there, a black spider big as my thumb waits for something edible to be trapped, unable to escape. Lately, I've regretted not burying Dad with the other veterans as he wished. Why did I insist on sticking him with his parents, sister, and grandparents in the family plot above Cemetery Curve, in the town he fought a war to leave? Later today, I'll look for the little flag with 48 stars he used to carry in parades, hoping the moths haven't eaten holes in it, so I can hang it outside the front gate come this Memorial Day. And I'll read just a few more short poems. Driving here from LA today, we came through Camarillo, and many of the farmers in our local's farmer market come down from Oxnard and Camarillo. And this is dedicated to my husband, who's in the back, but it's also dedicated to a farmer in Camarillo. The man who loves apples. I married a man who loves apples, who could eat several a day, and sometimes does, who prefers the flesh juicy, crisp, tart but not too, who every fall bemoans the galas and Fujis found on the West Coast. Cloyingly sweet, soft, soon mushy, without that crunch he craves. Delicious he won't touch. Granny Smith's, sour, tough of skin, the choice of desperation. Pink ladies, if they are small and recently picked, he will eat, but not enthusiastically. Years after we moved to LA, I thought he would never reconcile himself to life without Macs, Macoons, and best of all, his favorite hard-to-find wine saps, especially stamens, whose season is short and iffy, persnickety to grow, beloved of worms not easily shipped. They've fallen out of favor. My husband speaks so highly of them, our farmer's market avocado guru put in a few trees and saves the entire harvest for Tom, paltry though it is. He hasn't the heart to tell Frank they don't taste right. No cold snap early, long, or deep enough to set the flavor. Still, Tom buys them, lets Frank continue to believe he's doing a good thing, which he is. Lovely rain today, no? Urban encounter in a time of drought. A black snake about 2 feet long, slender as a pencil, suns itself on a quiet side street. It doesn't budge as I approach. Is it dead? The merest nudge with a stick, it sidewinds into the shrubbery. Terrified as I have been of snakes ever since our brownie troupe visited the herpetologist, who released her specimens and let them crawl freely around the room, I am sorry to chase this one away. After all, how often does one see a snake in Hollywood? It hardly rained all winter. Water restrictions in effect. Rationing comes next. Wild animals come down from the tinder-dry hills. As long as we can, we'll water the yard, run the fountain, fill the bird bath. Let the animals come, even the snakes. And for my last poem, I'll read the poem that Phil used for the reading. Domestic Karma. Pair of pulleys, a circle of rope stretched taut into parallel lines dividing the driveway. Lime tree from lemon and tangerine. Small square wicker basket. Wooden clothespins. The week's worth of suspended shirts tickles aloe, hens and chickens. Pillowcases, damp sheets release memories of rumpled sleep and bad dreams to the breeze. Clean underwear made fresh for the body you love to undress. Socks newly plumped, cushioned steps. Monday morning again. May this ritual help us get through the week between tests and results. May it bring 6 months of Mondays like this. Shirts loving sun on shoulders. Fear faded as favorite blue jeans pinned the line. Socks ready to take us wherever we want. Thank you.